Hey, everybody. Welcome. Glad you are here with me tonight. Let's do it.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, everybody. I am so glad to see all of you tonight. We're going to have yet another great late night chat. So if you've got something you would like me to touch on in the second half of our program, all I need you to do is go to buymeacoffee.com and send me a buy me a coffee. Or you can send me a Rumble rant on the Rumble, or you can cash at me at CalebMoppin22. If you got something for the second half of the show, that's the way to get me to comment on it. And you can do this afterwards too, right? Buy me a coffee is always open. Now, as far as announcements for tonight, this is going to be the last live stream for a little bit. I'm headed overseas. I'm getting on an airplane, going to another country tomorrow. And then I'll be back in the United States. But as soon as I get back, I am headed to Missouri, the U.S. state of Missouri, because I am a speaker at the Uhuru convention in St. Louis, Missouri, right? The international plenary of the African People's Socialist Party, the Uhuru movement that were charged with being agents of Russia. We were heavily involved in their defense. I was at their trial. I was at their sentencing. We were heavily involved in their case. They have invited me to attend their convention next weekend and give 2 messages on behalf of CPI. So I'll be there, and I'll be there on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And so I probably won't be streaming until a week or so from Monday. It looks like, the next 9 or 10 days, I probably won't be having any live streams because I'll be out of the country and then I'll be in Missouri. But what I have done is I have prepared for there to be a premiere videos. I've got a lot of videos lined up to premiere on this channel. The mega premiere videos that are really long, as well as the there's some shorter pieces. But the mega premiere videos that I do are videos that are like 8 hours long, and it's just a lot of different stuff that we've done over the years, cobbled together, and it's intended to be like background music, something you can listen to as you're getting through life, right? And it's old material. We do a lot on here. There's a lot of classes, a lot of videos, a lot of protests that we've done, a lot of conferences we've had, and it's a way to review old material. It's a way to just kind of get a feel for what we're about. I encourage people to use the mega premiere videos as background noise to get through the day. I do want to give a big thank you to everyone who has sent a donation to CPI, because that is how I was able to pay for my plane tickets to get out to the Uhuru convention. I was pretty short of funds coming out of last weekend, but there were a couple of people who stepped up and gave contributions, and I do appreciate it. And I'm headed out of town, and I'm still trying to get together funds for some of the stuff we've got coming up, for the workshops that we have coming up, as well as for the convention coming up in Chicago in August. And so if you can send a contribution to help us out, that would be great. The place to do it is the website, cpiusa.org. And there's a donate button. You can just go to cpiusa.org/donate. That will take you directly to the Stripe, and you can just send a contribution. Boom, goes straight to the CPI bank account. Very straightforward. Boom. That would be a great way to do that. I do want to thank everyone who stepped up and made it possible for me to go to the Uhuru convention, where I'm a speaker. It's going to be really great to be there. And, I'm going to be a little jet lagged probably while I'm there. I'll be a little bit tired because I've been, traveling. But that's the way these things go. And, we need to do everything we can to support the Uhuru movement. They're going to have their appeal in federal court in Atlanta, Georgia in the next few months. And so we need to mobilize to make sure that they get their case just completely thrown out. They were acquitted on the main charge. They were found guilty on a minor charge of conspiracy. Now they've been released from probation very, very early. They're not doing any probation. They didn't have to pay a fine. And it looks like we would like to get the whole case nullified for being a violation of their free speech. And, they have the right to speak about Russia. So that's where I'm headed next weekend. I hope that I will see you all there. I know there's people from the Uhuru movement or people that are heavily involved with the case like we are that watch this channel. So if you're one of those people, be sure to hit me up at the Uhuru convention. Maybe you see me, maybe I can give you a pamphlet. I'll be having CPI pamphlets here with me and all of that. And I did go to the post office today. We have our new CPI pamphlet, which we printed thousands of. I went to the post office today and I sent a huge box of them to Los Angeles. So the LA folks are going to start getting out our new pamphlet about the Kim Il-sung flower. And I sent a huge box of these to Minneapolis. So Penny and her team out there are going to start getting these out. We got a bunch of them left over here in New York. My wife is very angry about that. They're sitting on the shelf there. So when I get back from wherever I'm going, I will then take them back to the storage locker. But, we've got a lot to do. And, I guess we're just kind of giving basic announcements about what we got going on right now. So I'm going to another country. You can probably guess where, but you'll know once I'm back. I'm going to another country. Then I'll be back in the USA. I'll be speaking at the Uhuru convention in St. Louis, Missouri. It's really an honor to be part of that. Then in June 5th and 6th, I am going to be in Los Angeles. That's going to be interesting. June 5th and 6th, I'll be in LA. And then at the end of June, the date isn't clear exactly, but at the end of June, we'll have a date soon. I will be in Minneapolis. Again, I was just out there. It's a beautiful city. It's it'll be a lot warmer this time than it was last time I was out there, hopefully. At the end of June, I'll be in Minneapolis for a workshop out there. July 2nd, we're having a workshop here in New York City about the American Revolution. Not a workshop, really. It's just like an evening banquet with speeches and stuff about the American Revolution. And then all of this is culminating in August 12th to 19th. We're having our 7-day training program in Chicago. It's going to be very, very exciting. And our national convention will be in the middle of that on August 15th. So we've got a lot coming up. CPI has hit the ground running, and I am so excited about the Center for Political Innovation. We are the anti-imperialist movement of this country, and I am so excited. We put out a book of last year's convention. We put out a book that I've been, giving people, like a coffee table book of last year's convention. And it just shows, pictures of all the events that we did and, everyone who spoke at the convention, the long Q&A session, transcribed and everything. And I'm excited because at the end of this year's activities, we're going to have another book. That is our plan, is to put out a book like this every year to show what CPI is doing, to, that we can give people, to show them the organization, to document our activities. We are building a real movement of anti-imperialist education right here in America. And I'm absolutely proud of what we're doing. And let me just reiterate what I have said on the last few streams. I am not here to entertain you. I am here to recruit you. I am building an organization. We are building an organization, an anti-imperialist movement in America. We're going to be building community centers all across this country that teach anti-imperialism. We have a big plan for a big organization. We got a lot of work to do, but we need this. We're people that know this is the only future our country can have. We want to break out of the isolation that this system has put people into and give people something to strive for, a new America beyond imperialism. So if you want to get involved, go to our website and join. And that's what this channel is about. And I come on here night after night to communicate with people, to talk about what our movement, the Center for Political Innovation, anti-imperialist, anti-globalist movement, is all about. So I hope that you will check us out, and that's what I'm up to. So yeah, if you want to shoot us a donation just to make sure things go smoothly in the next few months, that would make everything easier. We got a lot on our plate coming up. And like I said, tune in to this channel. There's going to be a lot of videos premiering while I'm gone. That'll be very, very exciting. And so, yeah, we're going to have a normal stream tonight. So if you've got something you would like me to talk about in the second half of our show, all you need to do is go to buymeacoffee.com /Caleb Maupin and send it in. Or you can do a Rumble rant, or you can Cash App me. But you know, that's how we do questions in the second half of the show. This is the last show for a little bit, but we'll have a lot of videos premiering and stuff. So anyhow, it looks like negotiations between the United States and Iran are going to take place in Islamabad. I don't know what to say about that. I don't know on what grounds the United States can be expected to negotiate with anybody at this point. Multiple times, the USA has been negotiating with Iran and killed the very people they were negotiating with. The USA kidnapped the leader of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro. The United States has murdered a number of top Iranian officials. Now there seems to be a ceasefire that has been already broken in Lebanon that has the USA has violated by entering the drone space. There seems to be, this tentative agreement to Iran's 10 points, but now, the USA is saying, oh, we never agreed to these points. I don't know how Iran can negotiate with the United States. And I'm not here to tell the Iranians what to do. And there would be a time where I would have urged negotiation, but I look at everything Iran's been through over the last few months, few years, last decade, but particularly the last few months. And I don't know how I could, in good faith, tell them, oh, you must negotiate with America. I don't know how I could do that. So I guess if Iran is choosing to negotiate, that is their right. And I can only hope that some good outcome can result from this. But Iran has brought U.S. imperialism to the negotiating table. I mean, the United States thought they would just completely overthrow the Islamic Republic. I don't know if you remember, but after they murdered the supreme leader, Trump predicted the Iranian government was going to fall that day. And they blasted that all over social media, right? All the Trumpers on social media were told, oh, the mullahs, the ayatollahs, they've all wired their money out of the country. It's over. Iran is over. And that was a lie. It was just a total lie. The Islamic Republic is thoroughly intact. The Basij councils are in every neighborhood. The Islamic Revolutionary Guards are armed. Iran is very well intact. They have assassinated prominent leaders, but the Islamic Republic, the government of Iran, is very, very solid. They're not going anywhere. And that's a little bit of a problem for U.S. imperialism. And Trump made the most insane threats. He was going to destroy all the bridges and all the power plants. He was going to wipe out an entire civilization, he said. He was going to, make Iran a living hell. He was going to do all these things. And Iran didn't budge. And in fact, Iran mocked Donald Trump for his words. And about an hour before this deadline that Trump gave, in which he was going to just totally destroy Iran, Trump backed down. And the United States is completely humiliated. It is humiliating that the United States would even try to use that kind of barbaric, animalistic rhetoric. It's interesting. Our friend Ranjit Brar, he's been arrested for his anti-imperialist speech, and there's no video of this arrest. The speech is video recorded, but we don't have a video of when they came to his home and arrested him this time. But his prior arrest, where they arrested him for his pamphlet that he had, the police officer who arrested him began to argue with him, and he began explaining, why his pamphlet was not anti-Semitic. And the police officer said to him, "Sir, I have no doubt you are my intellectual superior, but it is my duty to arrest you. So I'm not at liberty to debate this. I must simply arrest you." And I laughed when I saw that, because I said, no American police officer would ever say to someone he was arresting, "I have no doubt you are my intellectual superior." It was like the most British moment I had ever seen, right? I mean, when does an arresting officer say, "Sir, I have no doubt you are my intellectual superior, but as we're arresting you, I must." It was particularly hilarious, right? And that American culture is a bit more crass than British culture, right? There's no question about it, right? Americans, Americans use crude language. Americans carry guns. Americans, we are more rude. We're not as polite, or as in the derogatory, in the polite sense, or or uptight, as the Brits are. But it just is a sign of utter weakness. U.S. leaders threaten to nuke countries all the time. The phrase "all options are on the table," it's been pointed out, is actually a violation of international law, because it is a threat of a use of force, and the threat of the use of force is a violation of the United Nations Charter. And "all options are on the table" includes nuclear weapons. That means nukes, right? Because those are, and the phrase "all options are on the table" is used by U.S. leaders pretty frequently, but it's a hint, right? It's subtle, right? I mean, all options are on the table does include nuclear weapons, does include bombing, and so Obama and Bush and all of them have said all options are on the table many times. But what Trump did on social media in the last couple weeks, the fact that any country would have a leader who would use such rhetoric, that is not a sign of strength. That is a sign of utter weakness, right? When the United States can say all options are on the table, that's like, we're the mighty United States, and think about what our options might be, and we're not going to get too excited here. We're just telling you we could nuke you. But when Trump says, "I am going to wipe out an entire civilization, I'm going to turn them into a living hell, nothing will ever come again, I am going to power plants, bridges," that is not only is it undignified and impolite and criminal, and it's criminal to just threaten that kind of thing, let alone do it, violates the UN Charter. But on top of that, that type of language reeks of desperation. If you're a really powerful country, you don't have to do that. Right. It's kind of like, I think about being in school. I hate to use this analogy because we're talking about death and war and very serious things, but there's a lot of things in life that are kind of like this when you deal with children. They talk about, an effective teacher, a very effective teacher can walk into the room and get the class's attention by speaking quietly, right? And it's, if you've ever seen this, the teacher walks into the room and the kids are being loud, and he says, "Kids," and he speaks quietly, but he speaks with power, and the kids stop moving because they want to hear what he has to say. And an effective teacher that commands obedience can walk into the room and not raise their voice, and just say, "Kids," and if his body language or his demeanor communicates a level of seriousness, he can summon the kids' attention by speaking quietly, right? They say speak softly, but carry a big stick. But, if you have a class full of kids and they're goofing off and throwing paper at each other, and a teacher walks in, especially a male teacher. Women can get away with this a little bit more. With a woman, it's just a little bit like the shock. I don't know what it is, but women can get away with being crazy a little bit more. But if a male teacher, substitute teacher, walks into a classroom and kids are throwing paper and making noise, and he says, stop it, you kids. If you don't stop it, I'm going to make hell and fury. And that, the kids are immediately going to get little smiles on their faces and think, oh my God. Oh my God. This guy is a target. This guy is easily provoked. This is going to be a fun day. And anyone who's, I remember being in elementary school and understanding that, right? I remember we had one substitute teacher who came in one time. This guy was an older guy. I think he was a Vietnam veteran. And he walked in and he was mad, and he walked in and he said, are there, you kids have got to listen to me. And, you don't listen to me. You just try to not listen to what I've got to say. And I'll tell you, I will come down on you so hard. And he just he gave us this big speech about how big and scary he was. And I remember every boy in the class had like a slight grin on their face, like, oh my God, we are going to have fun with this guy. Because by doing that, by coming in with all that bluster, it was really revealing that he didn't have confidence and he didn't have anything to back it up with. And he felt a need to put on that show because that show was actually a sign of how scared he was to be in a class full of kids and how he really didn't have confidence about what he would do. He was really afraid of his authority being undermined. And the fact that Donald Trump would get on social media and make these wild, over-the-top threats. Everybody knows America's got nuclear weapons. Everybody knows that America's got, the biggest military budget of any country in the world. If the United States was a responsible, confident country, and they wanted to level this kind of threat and intimidate Iran, the U.S. would have gotten on there and said, I really hope Iran does what we want, or, all options will be on the table. And they would have said it quietly, and that would have been an understanding. But the fact that Donald Trump got on there and came forward with all this insane bluster, it was absolutely a sign of how he didn't have anything to back it up with. You don't have to put on a show like that, right? There's various ways people talk about this, right? They say that, that some people are all hat and no cattle, meaning that, there's a lot of people who wear cowboy hats and put on a show, but they've never actually been around cows. They've never actually been out west, right? They're all hat and they're no cattle. And, crashing out. That's a new phrase people are using for like an emotional meltdown or something. That's a new trendy phrase, crashing out. Trump crashed out big time on social media, big time crash out. And it caused the world to not take Trump seriously. And it caused the world to not take America seriously. And is that a bad thing? Not necessarily. No. Look, the United States is not going to be the center of the global economy. We urgently need to transition to a multipolar world in which America trades with Russia and China and Iran and Venezuela and all these countries on the basis of win-win cooperation. That's really the only possible future America can have. We can go down with the ship. We can follow the British Empire system to the end and just keep attacking countries and just doing everything we can to create chaos and death to just try and keep Wall Street and London at the center of the world economy. Or we can have a government that is pro-growth, a government that is pro-humanity and trades with countries and transitions the United States to finding a seat at the table in a world where countries are developing on a cooperative win-win basis. And that's the choice before us right now. And what Trump was doing, it was the desperation of somebody who is, whether he realizes it or not, is as wedded to this British Empire system. And this British Empire system doesn't have the strength that it once had. It doesn't have the power and the punch behind it that it once had. So they're trying to make up for what they lack in military ability, with bluster, with theater, with threats. I'm trying to think of an example, right? It's kind of like, they talk about people that are really rich. They don't show off their wealth, right? If you see somebody driving down the road in a really, really fancy car and, waving wads of $100 bills around, they're not really rich, right? They have a little bit of money and they're showing it off, but people that actually have lots of money don't feel a need to do that. I'm trying to think. I mean, there's other examples of that, right? But there's just, it is a real sign of weakness. It's a real embarrassing moment for America. And now Iran is apparently negotiating. There is a diplomatic delegation in Islamabad. So we're going to have to see what happens. But this is a bad, bad moment for America. Bad, bad moment for the Western imperialist system that America has tied itself to. And it should be a very, very proud moment for Iran. That Iran, the USA was threatening to completely wipe them out and all of this. And Iran's like, yep, okay, go ahead. Oh, really? Yeah, okay. Yeah. And Iran just kind of made fun of the United States as the USA, as Trump was waving his arms figuratively. I mean, he wasn't literally, but as he was making hyperbolic, crazy, foaming at the mouth threats, I'm going to do this to you, and then I'm going to do that to you, and oh my God, I'm going to kill you, and then I'm going to double kill you, and I'm going to bring you back to life and kill you again, and I'm going to take the arm off and put the arm where the leg was and the leg where the arm was, and you're going to walk around with a leg where your arm is, and it's going to be so bad, I'm going to mess you up so bad, you're not going to, it's the joke, right? It's like, I'm going to cut you up so bad, you're going to wish I didn't cut you up so bad. It was just like, he was just like getting silly with his threats. And Iran was just like, okay. And it was an hour before, all hell will come, 8:00, and it was 7:00. And Trump was going to have to deliver on his threats at 8:00. And at 7:00, an hour beforehand, Trump was just like, okay, yeah, I'll give you guys whatever you want. I'll give you whatever you want. You 10-point plan. Yeah, fine. Whatever you want. And Trump, he tweeted out an image of the Islamic Council, the Islamic Republic's National Security Council, listing a 10-point agreement. And the 10-point agreement, I don't even think he knew what the 10 points were. It was very, very embarrassing. And that's where we're at. And so I guess there's going to be negotiations and we'll see how this develops. But, we saw the New York Times report. I actually did a commentary, not a commentary. I did reporting for RT, but with analysis on the New York Times piece. So I'll just put that on because now the New York Times is trying to tell us that this was all Trump. And nobody else in Trump's administration agreed with it. So RT had me on and I did a segment for my job at RT about the New York Times claim that that Trump was all by himself. So here's what my recent piece, I'll put it on.
Ambition to destroy the Islamic Republic.
In a series of Situation Room meetings, President Trump weighed his instincts against the deep concerns of his vice president and a pessimistic intelligence assessment. The reporting underscores how closely Mr. Trump's hawkish thinking aligned with Mr. Netanyahu's over many months, more so than even some of the president's key advisors recognized.
Well, this version of events presents Trump the hawk and says that Bibi Netanyahu convinced Donald Trump to do it, and his whole team was just opposed. Marco Rubio was opposed, according to the article. The CIA director was opposed. J.D. Vance made clear a number of times he didn't like the idea. But Trump stood alone and decided to do it with Netanyahu encouraging him. Now, that is a very, very hard to accept narrative if one looks at how many times U.S. politicians, year after year, have spoken about their desire and their feeling that there is a strong need to destroy the Islamic Republic of Iran. Let's review.
Bomb Iran, bomb, 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 bomb. Anyway.
I want the Iranians to know that if I'm the president, we will attack Iran.
We're going to do everything we can on my end, and I think working with the Biden administration, Mr. Prime Minister, to make Iran's worst nightmare real.
We may have to decide at some point what is worse, war or a military strike against Iran or a nuclear-armed Iran.
Now, for 2 decades, we've had the revelations of General Wesley Clark, who stepped down during the Bush administration and gave a list at the time of countries that the United States was targeting for regime change. Let's review what was revealed 2 decades ago when a top U.S. general stepped down and gave revelations about what was being discussed behind closed doors.
This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
The very same New York Times that is saying that no one wanted to go along with Trump's war has itself fed the narrative that regime change in Iran is necessary. You can look at the headlines and the articles the New York Times itself has run over the years, playing up the idea that Iran is a threat, playing up the idea that the Iranian regime is at the center of terrorism in the region, playing up the idea that Iran is trying to acquire a nuclear bomb. The New York Times has told us this year after year after year, and it's even run articles suggesting that some kind of regime change war might be necessary against the Islamic Republic. So this idea that Trump did this all on his own is very, very hard to swallow, but it makes you wonder, in light of the recent revelations, if this is almost like rats jumping out of a sinking ship. And at this point, Trump's war hasn't been the huge success many expected it would be, and they don't want the blame for it. It appears that media is trying to help some within the Trump administration salvage their reputations after the disastrous results of a wildly unpopular war. Unpopular among the American people, certainly unpopular with the world, but now they want us to believe it was also unpopular in the circles of power, yet it still happened.
Yep. So I do have a couple more things I want to talk about in my opening remarks for tonight, but if you want me to answer any questions, you got any questions for me to answer, and keep in mind, I'm not going to be live streaming for about a week to 10 days after this. So if you got a question, you better send it in now. Go to buymeacoffee.com, send me a question. You can do Rumble rants if you're on the Rumble, or you can cash at me at CalebMoppin22. But questions in the second half of the show, this is going to be your last chance for a little bit. I'm about to hit the road, so send in some good questions. Folks, why did the Center for Political Innovation come into existence? Why did our organization exist? It existed because in 2011, Libya, the most prosperous country on the African continent, was bombed and destroyed by the United States. And based on my studying of Marxist economics and of anti-imperialism, I saw Libya as a stronghold of anti-imperialism. I saw Libya as a stronghold of the kind of socialism that I believed in. Libya had the highest life expectancy on the African continent. They had universal housing, universal health care, free education for the population. People from all over Africa were trying to get into Libya. because they had a policy that anyone who came to Libya would be guaranteed a job, any African. Gaddafi wanted to create an African bank with an African currency for the African Union. And Libya had built the world's largest irrigation system, the Great Man-Made River. And Libya had not only, by taking control of its oil resources, built up prosperity and raised the level of development in their own country, they had helped people around the world fighting against imperialism. Gaddafi gave funding to the Irish Republican Army, the IRA. Gaddafi gave support to Nelson Mandela in his fight against apartheid. Gaddafi gave support to the Black Panthers and the Nation of Islam in America. Gaddafi supported the Palestinians. Gaddafi was just a friend of all anti-colonial movements. And when he was overthrown, the so-called socialist movement did nothing. Nothing. Right? The same people that had been in the streets by the hundreds of thousands to oppose the war in Iraq did nothing. And almost all the communist groups supported the so-called revolution that was being funded by US-backed NGOs to overthrow the Libyan government because Barack Obama was president and because it was being sold as a people's revolution. And almost all the groups supported the so-called revolution. And then when the USA started bombing and destroying Libya, supposedly in the name of supporting this revolution, some of them put out a few paragraphs saying, yeah, well, we don't agree with the USA bombing, but they didn't do anything to oppose the bombing. They didn't march in the streets to oppose it. They didn't do anything about it. There was a small minority of leftists that dared oppose the bombing of Libya. And the Party for Socialism and Liberation, the Workers' World Party, the United States Marxist-Leninist Organization, the Freedom Road Socialist Organization. It was like you could count on your hands the number of socialist and leftist groups that actually defended a prosperous African socialist country against U.S. imperialism. And even among those groups, I was in one of those groups in the Workers' World Party, the defense was weak and pathetic. Weak and pathetic. We had one event at Riverside Church where they had speakers. Ramsey Clark went there with Cynthia McKinney, and he went to Libya and offered statements of support. And that was it. I mean, there were a couple little protests, and that was it. They didn't do anything about it. But yet, if it came time to protest against Republicans, oh my God, when Rush Limbaugh came to speak in Manhattan, we were all out there protesting Rush Limbaugh, the conservative radio host. When there was any talk of abortion being restricted, or, we were out there in big numbers for the Democrats. Around any trendy liberal cause, we could be out there. But when it came to Libya, the most prosperous country on the African continent, they wouldn't do anything about it. And in fact, the Workers' World Party that I was a member of spent more time trying to convince me that Libya was not a socialist country than they did supporting Libya against U.S. imperialism, right? They never had any argument about why Libya wasn't socialist. It just wasn't. It just wasn't. That's why, because we say so, because I mean, they didn't have a reason, right? And I was in the Occupy Wall Street Park on October 20th, 2011, the day that Gaddafi, the great African leader, the great anti-colonial fighter, was killed. And I noticed on that day that, my own political group was not very supportive. They were kind of indifferent, right? And there was Trotskyite groups there selling their paper. They had nothing good to say. But in the park, there were a lot of libertarians and Alex Jones fans that were sympathetic to Gaddafi. And they had talked about how he was building an African bank to counter the Federal Reserve. And that even though their politics were very confused, they were Alex Jones fans, they were into conspiracy stuff, they didn't understand economics in the same way I did, they were far more interested in solidarity with Libya than any of the professional left. And that was the beginning, you could say, of what became our organization, was when I saw that there were a lot of working class people like me at Occupy Wall Street, a lot of working class kids from the Midwest who supported Gaddafi. But then there were a lot of middle class hipster Trotskyites who the idea of supporting Gaddafi was just absurd to them. Why would anyone dare do such a thing? That was the beginning. That was the beginning. But the story continued, and in 2014, I visited the Islamic Republic of Iran for the first time. And I attended the New Horizon Conference in Iran, and it was a great conference. And at that conference, they explained that Iran is not capitalist, but they're not Marxist either. And they explained that they have markets in Iran. They have private corporations. They seek foreign investment. They have private hotels, private restaurants, and private factories and such. But the banking system is run by the government. The government controls the oil. The military, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, is the primary economic entity in the country that owns more than anything else. And that they have these Basij councils that enforce the will of the revolution on a local level, and they call it not capitalism but Islam, war of poverty against wealth, neither east nor west. And that Iran's economic system was largely a state-run economy. It was largely a planned economy without profits in command. But like China and like Venezuela and like Vietnam and like modern socialist countries, they wanted a market sector. They wanted to utilize the market to make their Islamic economy stronger, but they had a powerful state that came out of an anti-colonial revolution that controlled the economy in order to make sure they had economic growth. And that this is what imperialism is. Imperialism is countries being kept in poverty, being unable to grow. Imperialism is when multinational corporations from the West come and forcibly seize control of countries and prevent their development. It's the export of capital, as Lenin put it in his book, Imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism, right? It's the fact that in Mexico, even though they've been growing their own food since before Christopher Columbus, if you go to the store in Mexico, you're going to buy food from Kraft and Monsanto and American agribusiness. It's the fact that the people of Nigeria, they've got loads and loads of oil, but that oil is under the control of BP and ExxonMobil and Chevron, and the people of Nigeria are very, very poor. It is big corporations stretching their tentacles all over the world and holding back development. It's the fact that in Guatemala and in Honduras and in Central America, you've got whole sections of the country with no running water, with no electricity, where people don't even speak Spanish. They still speak indigenous languages. They have no education. They are living in primitive conditions. That's imperialism. Imperialism is keeping the world poor. It's when the British Empire went to India and they burned all their looms. These people had been weaving long before Europeans did. They had huge looms and they burned them all down. And they forced the people of India to import their cloth from Britain. That's what imperialism is. Imperialism is about stopping development. Imperialism is not Avatar, right? There's this movie called Avatar, right? And there was a movie that came out much earlier called Dances with Wolves. And Dances with Wolves is a live action movie, and Avatar is like the science fiction outer space version of it. But basically, Dances with Wolves is this boomer hippie fantasy of this white guy who just doesn't fit in with the white people. And he runs away and he joins the Native Americans, and the Native Americans are nice and they're kind and they hold all things in common and they don't have technology and they're so amazing. Avatar is it's outer space. There's some guy who just doesn't fit in with the humans, but he goes to this planet where there are these beautiful blue people who live in nature or something. That's not what anti-imperialism is. That is just not what anti-imperialism is. Anti-imperialism is not the noble savage trope. Anti-imperialism is countries fighting for the right to have full electrification, fighting for the right to have paved roads, fighting for the right to have modern education systems. It is not countries fighting for the right to be impoverished and live in the woods. It is not a rebellion against civilization. It is imperialism that is barbarism. It is imperialism that creates instability and poverty and chaos. And if you look at all the countries the USA attacks, they don't become stable and modern. They become impoverished. They become chaotic. Iraq hasn't become stable and modern since the United States invaded. That was not the plan. The goal was to destroy a prosperous anti-imperialist country and replace it with chaos. And that's what they've got. If you look at Iraq, it's in utter chaos. Libya, after they destroyed Libya, now what was once the most prosperous country on the African continent has, at this point, all kinds of instability. Big chunks of the country don't have electrification. They have slave trafficking, human trafficking, and it's an absolute disaster what they've done. And when they attack a country, they don't bring development. They prevent development. That's what imperialism is. It is the Roman model. It is about controlling the trade routes. All roads lead to Rome. You ever hear that expression, all roads lead to Rome? That's because the Romans controlled all the trade routes. When the Romans went to war with Carthage, there was another city-state that rivaled the Romans. It was called Carthage. What did the Romans do after the war with Carthage? They went to Carthage with a bunch of salt, ocean salt, and they ground salt into the soil to make sure that on the land of Carthage in Tunisia, no crops could ever grow again. And you'd say, well, Caleb, that's not what the Romans should have done. They should have gone there, and once they defeated the people of Carthage, they should have put them to work plowing their soil. Well, that's not what they did. The Romans took their plows and they took sea salt and they put salt in all the soil to make sure that no crops could ever grow there again, because they did not want anything like the powerful city-state of Carthage to emerge again that could challenge the authority of Rome. And that is imperialism. Imperialism is degrowth, right? Anyone who tells you that they know degrowth is what we need and all this. No, imperialism is degrowth. Iraq was once a somewhat prosperous country that had broken out of imperialism and seized its oil resources. Now, Iraq has been degrown. And on top of that, we've seen degrowth in Libya. Libya was the most prosperous country on the African continent, huge, great man-made river, irrigation system, and now Libya has been degrown. And NAFTA degrew Mexico. Mexico used to have a prosperous farming sector, and now that's been eliminated. And now you got the drug gangs and the narcos, and Mexico has been degrown. Imperialism is degrowth. And when they degrow countries around the world, it's called imperialism. And when they degrow here at home, it's called fascism. Imperialism and fascism are an attempt to save the capitalist system of production from its own irrational nature. Never before in history have we had an economic system where people were hungry because there were too many houses, where children were cold in the winter because there was too much heating gas, where people were hungry because there was too much food. Capitalism has an unnatural problem, a problem of glut. 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 Poverty amid plenty. Poverty created by abundance. That is an unnatural problem. That the more wealth that is produced, the poorer people get. And that the more efficient it becomes to create wealth, the more technology advances, the poorer people get. And this is a problem that the capitalist system cannot overcome. As long as profit is in command of production, you're going to have this problem. It's the coal miner's riddle. The little boy says to his father, "Why is it so cold?" The father says, "Because I can't afford any coal to heat the stove in our home." He says, "Why can't you afford any coal?" He says, "Because I lost my job. I was laid off at my job at the coal mine." "Why were you laid off? Why did you lose your job at the coal mine?" "Because there is too much coal." That is the problem of the capitalist system. And there's a reason that the US government buys millions and billions of dollars worth of cheese and buries it in a cave in Missouri to keep the dairy prices and the price of dairy high enough. And there's a reason that the US government spends billions and billions of dollars on bombs and tanks and weapons and mass destructive military armaments that we hope we never have to use. And that's because that keeps the economy churning along. And John Maynard Keynes, the economist, called it the problem of underconsumption. Karl Marx called it the problem of overproduction. Generally, economists just call it glut, G-L-U-T, glut. This is an unnatural problem. And when technology advances, the problem gets worse. And if you look at the capitalist economies of the world, the great economic crises that break out tend to come after great technological leaps. When there is a great technological leap, it is followed by a great prolonged economic crisis. What sense does that make? Human beings are creative, we innovate, we become better at producing wealth, and as a result, we all get poorer. That doesn't make any sense. And the way to overcome it is to centralize the instruments of production, to rationally organize the economy, to have a state that works on behalf of society overall, to rationally control the means of production so that technological advancement and the creation of wealth leads to prosperity for all. It is overcoming the anarchy of production, the chaos of the market, the instability of the capitalist system. The capitalist system, as said by Frederick Engels, is a system where preliminary transformation, it is the system in which all production is defined by preliminary transformation into capital. Profits are in command. Profits should not be in command. We as society should come together and say, no, we're not going to let the invisible hand of the market take care of our children. No, we're not going to let the anarchy of production prevail. We are going to have a government that breaks the power of the big monopolies and organizes the economy rationally to make sure that wealth and abundance lead to a more prosperous future for humanity. That is the struggle that we are in. And that's what it's all about. And country after country, as they deal with this, as they desperately try to keep people buying products, they seize countries as captive markets, they impoverish nations, and they are compelled to drive down our wages. They are compelled to invade and colonize and beat down countries that are their competitors and seize them as captive markets because they have this constant problem of always producing more than they pay out in wages. People can never buy back the products that they produce. And that is the capitalist mode of production. And that is the problem. That is the problem. And around the world, countries that have been subjected to these attacks, like China, that was the sick man of Asia, a country that had been attacked and invaded in 2 opium wars and prevented from building up its own economy by the British Empire. They had a revolution and they broke out of the British Empire and they started building their country up and raising people up out of poverty. They're the second largest economy in the world. And they have a market, but they have a state that comes out of an anti-colonial revolution that oversees the economy and makes sure that growth continues. And you could say the same thing about the Islamic Republic of Iran. You could say the same thing about Russia. In the 1990s, after the fall of the Soviet Union, Russia was degrown, right? They went to Russia and they looted the place and they closed down the factories and they closed down the collective farms and they implemented free market libertarian policies, and it was a nightmare. And then Putin came in and he reasserted state control. It put oil and gas under public ownership, and as a result, Russia's economy stabilized. Russia has a state that controls the economy. They have a big market sector, but they also have a state that makes sure growth continues. And that new system that emerged, that system of anti-imperialism, a state that controls the economy, a state that's rooted in an anti-colonial revolution that plans the economy, that came into the world as a result of the Soviet Union, as a result of the Russian Revolution, but it's now transcended that. It's gone to a whole new place. And we now have a whole new world that exists outside the chaos of the market, outside the international financial order of Wall Street and London. And our leaders in the West are determined to prevent that world from coming into existence. And our message should be that our real enemy is at home. Our real enemy is the Wall Street bankers that are setting up a low-wage police state and grinding nations into poverty, trying to destroy our lives and our living standards, and that we need a state that invests in people. We need a state that sees human beings as the source of all wealth and unleashes the next generation to be productive and prosperous consumers. We need a government of action that will fight for working families. A government of action that'll fight for working families. We need a state that breaks the power of the big bankers and big monopolies and injects credit into communities and makes sure that there is growth. An anti-monopoly government, a government of action that fights for working families. And right now, what we have is a Malthusian government, a government that thinks the way to stabilize the economy is to impoverish people. And Republicans tend to focus on impoverishing the working class by weakening labor unions, by cutting social benefits. And Democrats tend to focus on impoverishing the middle class by implementing regulations and policies that eliminate small business owners and make it harder, secure the monopoly of the ultra rich. But at the end of the day, they both believe in degrowth. Degrowth is what the imperialists believe in. Malthusianism, the idea that the only way the world can get better is by eliminating humanity, forcing us into greater and greater poverty. And what we have to realize is that Malthusianism and degrowth is a false solution, because humanity is not going to end. Their system is going to end, but humanity is not going to end. And they need degrowth so they can stay at the top, but we don't need degrowth. In fact, there's a whole section of the world that is growing and continuing to grow and build and construct. They're talking about overpopulation. But in reality, the Western countries right now are facing a problem of a low birth rate. In the next 20 or 30 years, we're going to be paying economically for the fact that there won't be enough people in the U.S. economy. The birth rate is dropping. And as a result, the population of the Western countries is dropping. And there's not going to be the spending power. Our economy is going to suffer. We need more people, not less people. We need more people. We need more people to work in jobs and produce wealth. We need more people to spend money and keep the economy going. There is no problem of overpopulation. There is a problem of depopulation. But that depopulation will eliminate the middle class and the small business owners, and it will secure the profits of the big monopolies. The strategy of the Rockefellers and the DuPonts and the Carnegies and the big monopolies is to drive the economy down, and by doing so, eliminate the middle strata and secure the monopoly. And we saw this with Barack Hussein Obama. He drove the oil prices down. Right? With Saudi Arabia, Barack Hussein Obama drove the oil prices in 2014. The oil price dropped less than $30 a barrel. And what did that do? That eliminated the fracking cowboys, the frackers. Big oil was competing with the fracking companies. But then when the price of oil sank, the fracking companies all went out of business, and ExxonMobil and BP and Shell and Chevron secured their monopoly. And when they drove the oil prices down, that drastically weakened Venezuela, and it drastically weakened Iran, and it hurt Russia's economy. And by making the economy worse, the big monopolies can secure their power, and they can eliminate their competition. And that is the Malthusian strategy. If we can degrow, we can reduce the birth rate, we can reduce the spending power, we can make everything less and less and less, then that middle class and all our competition around the world and all our competition here at home will be eliminated, and the big monopolies can secure their power without competition, and we can all get merged into their corporate low-wage police state nightmare of heavily controlled degrowth imperialism that they're trying to set up. And that is their vision. And there's a lot of people in America who don't want to go along with it. And a lot of people in Europe who don't go along with it. Unfortunately, they're all in what they call the new right, right? And that's what the new right was all about, right? In Britain, the Brexit crowd, Nigel Farage and all of that, they They want to keep making money. They don't want a controlled demolition in order to secure the profits of the big monopolies. They want to keep their small businesses. They want to keep their hotels and restaurants going. And the same for the Trump capitalists, the people supporting Trump, right? Hobby Lobby, big supporters of Trump. They don't want the population to go down. They want there to be lots of evangelical Christian moms who are filling up their SUVs and filling up their minivans and driving to go to Hobby Lobby to buy craft, supplies for their art school projects, right? And the same for Bernie Marcus. Bernie Marcus, the owner of Home Depot. He doesn't want there to be less people in the world. He wants there to be more people in the world. So they go and shop at Home Depot and they buy screws and hammers and nails and saws and light bulbs and that there's a lot of capitalists that are not fully on board with the plan for a heavily managed degrowth to stabilize the economy. And that is the division. And Israel and Netanyahu, they don't want to be degrown because they're only thinking about themselves. And the divide within the ruling class is largely between the ultra rich and their long-term strategy of degrowing the world. Degrowing the world, creating a low-wage police state at home, grinding nations of the world into poverty, and setting up a highly controlled degrowth capitalism to keep them at the top forever. And the lower levels of capital that just want to make money and they don't care how they make money. And that is the contradiction in our times. But at the end of the day, they're both wrong. They're both wrong. The lower levels of capital that want to impoverish the working class while maintaining their position as the middle class, and the ultra rich that want to eliminate the small business owners and forcibly degrow the economy, both of them are wrong. What we need is an anti-monopoly government, a government that doesn't kick the ass of you or me and the working families of this country. And it doesn't kick the ass of the bar owner or the restaurant owner in your neighborhood or the small businessman. We need a government that will kick the ass of ExxonMobil and BP and Shell and Chevron and Bill Gates and the Silicon Valley fascists. We need a government that will smash the power of the big monopolies. We need an anti-monopoly government, a government of action that will fight for working families. That is what we need in America, a government that will break the power of the ultra-rich, not impoverishing the poor and working people, not eliminating the middle class and the small business owner, but combining the strength of the working class and the small business owner and the people of the world and struggling against their monopolies into one anti-monopoly coalition to break the power of the big monopolies. That is what we need. And to break the power of the big monopolies in order to unleash growth, we need a state that understands it has an obligation to serve the people, a state that invests in its population, a state that oversees economic development and raising the people up and investing in the next generation as a great resource for making a more prosperous society. That is what we need in America, and that is what we need in the world. The world beyond U.S. imperialism is governments that invest in their people and oversee the development and expansion of human productivity and human creativity. We need a government of action that fights for working families. We need a society that embraces the creative power of human beings. That's what we need. And that is what the Center for Political Innovation advocates. And if whatever you want to call that, you can call that socialism or communism if you want. The socialists and communists don't think it's that. And you can call it fascism if you want. I don't think that's what it is. I think fascism is degrowth. And I look at Nazi Germany and the countries there that it looks like degrowth to me, but people point fingers and call us fascists all the time and they can do whatever they want. You can call it whatever you want. We need a government of action that fights for working families. We need a state that invests in people, not in wars and prisons for profit and impoverishment. We need a pro-humanity, pro-growth government to oppose the imperialists. We need an anti-imperialist government. We need to break America out of imperialism. And the only way that we're going to do that is with a mass movement. It's not going to come through voting for the Democrats. It's not going to come through voting for the Republicans. It's not going to come for voting for anybody. We need a mass movement. That's the only way we can get it. And anything short of a mass movement ain't going to cut it. And we have to build a mass movement. And right now, the American people are against these wars. The American people are against the impoverishment that they're facing. The American people are against their civil liberties and their rights being stripped away. The American people are against the power of the big monopolies. The American people didn't appreciate these lockdowns that destroyed them during the pandemic. The American people don't appreciate the roads in their neighborhood not being paved and the good-paying government jobs and the good-paying industrial jobs being eliminated. The American people don't appreciate the schools their kids going to being shit. They don't appreciate the fact their water is not being properly purified. They don't appreciate the fact that we don't have decent hospitals in this country for medical care. They don't appreciate it. They do not appreciate it. The American people are more sympathetic to the perspective that I am putting out here than ever before. And that's why there's a big distraction going on. They want it to be a culture war. They don't want us talking about the fight against the big monopolies, the low-wage police state, the danger of war and opposing war. They want us talking about, are you for transgender or are you against transgender? They want us talking about, are you for abortion or are you against abortion? They want us talking about, are you offended by the Super Bowl halftime show and Big Bunny or Bad Bunny or whatever his name is? Or do you like Big Bunny or Bad Bunny or whatever his name is? That's what they want us talking about. They don't want us talking about what actually matters. And I'm telling you that we've been through woke, and woke was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. It didn't fix any of the problems it set out to fix. Maybe it's good, I guess, that there's more awareness about racial injustice and those kinds of issues. But ultimately, woke just led to a lot of people being shrill and pointing fingers at each other and being angry. Woke was a nightmare. And MAGA was also a nightmare. We've been through MAGA, and MAGA didn't fix anything, right? Having ICE raids, people, parents being separated from their kids, having the streets of Minneapolis, ICE terrorizing people and, breaking into apartment buildings. That didn't fix anything, right? And this war in Iran, which Trump said no new wars, and here we go. We got all kinds of new wars. That's not fixing anything. And I mean, MAGA has been a nightmare. Woke was a nightmare. MAGA was a nightmare. We didn't need woke. Woke did not solve your problem. MAGA did not solve your problem. There's something coming next that will potentially open the door to solving your problem. After woke and the failure of woke, after MAGA and the failure of MAGA, the next step is populism. The populist movement and the populist revolution has to come next. And the populist movement and the populist revolution is coming. We saw this. This was Ro Khanna, the congressman from California. This is what he said, and this is what he said.
And as an American citizen, I am relieved that Donald Trump has accepted a ceasefire and withdrawn his threat to destroy Iranian civilization. But let's be clear, this did not happen because of Congress, which barely made a whimper. This happened because of the force of the American people. Not just progressives and liberals, but conservatives like Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and even Ann Coulter spoke out against the horror of threatening genocide against another people. This tells me one thing. The only thing that will save this country, the only thing that will save our democracy is a broad populist social movement, anti-Epstein class, anti-war, pro-working class.
Yeah. A broad populist movement. And I think it's coming. We're going to see a broad populist movement. Marjorie Taylor Greene's not going away. Tucker Carlson's not going away. Ro Khanna is not going away. Bernie Sanders is not going away. And I think we're going to see the beginning of a populist movement. And we're not going to blindly tail that populist movement. We're going to criticize it, right? Because Ro Khanna is not good on Ukraine. He wants to send more weapons to Ukraine. He wants to fight Russia. And Marjorie Taylor Greene in the past has been not so good on some issues. We're not going to blindly tail populism, but populism is the next phase. And we need to be right there in the middle of it. We need to be right there in the middle of it, guiding populism towards anti-imperialism. Populism is closer than woke was. It's going to be closer than MAGA was, but populism is going to be full of contradictions. It's going to be full of contradictions. Ro Khanna is talking about the new economic patriotism. We had Andrew Yang who wrote about, a human-centered capitalism, and populism is coming, right? And Cenk Uygur, even though he canceled and smeared people for being populist, he's now doing this populist thing. Populism is the next phase. And there's going to be a lot of phonies and frauds in the populist movement, but it's a step in the right direction, and we have got to be in the middle of it. We have got to be in the middle of the coming populist movement to guide it in a good direction, to push it toward anti-imperialism, right? Toward being a movement against this globalist, imperialist system and in favor of a pro-growth, anti-monopoly government, a government of action that fights for working families. And it's not going to be easy. Let's not pretend that it will be easy. It is not going to be easy. But it can be done, and it will be done, and we're going to do it. And that's why we need you to join the Center for Political Innovation. And that's why we need you to get involved in our activities. And that's why if you're in Minneapolis, you need to come to our workshop at the end of June. If you're in LA, you need to come to our workshop at the beginning of June. If you're in New York City, you need to come to our event on July 2nd. And if you're in any part of this country, you need to come to our 7-day training program that is taking place August 12th to 19th. We have got to build the movement. And this YouTube channel has been around a long time, and we've gone through a lot of different phases, and we've done all kinds of different things. But at the end of the day, this YouTube channel is a mechanism for organizing. It is a way that we can all check in and engage with each other. It's a way we can get to know each other. It's a way we can document our activities, and it's a way we can stay connected. But my goal here is to recruit you. I want you to join this movement. That is what I want to do. I don't want you to be entertained by me. I don't want you to be appreciating, just find it intellectual intrigue. If I'm not recruiting you, I'm not succeeding in what I am trying to do. I'm tired. I am tired of playing around. I really, really am. There's way too many podcasts out there. There's way too much people just on the internet talking at each other. We need a movement. We urgently need a movement. There are far too many Americans that are against this war that haven't done anything about it. There are far too many Americans who agree with what we say here, but are not involved in building anything in their community. And we are going to build community centers in every corner of this country. And we are going to organize. We are going to organize because that's the only way out of this. There is no other way out of this. We've got to build a community of people. And that requires risk, and it requires patience, and it requires not getting your way on everything. And it requires sometimes having a tough time and dealing with people that sometimes can be hard to deal with. But that's just the way it goes, folks. Nothing else is going to do it. Nothing else is going to cut it. And they will do everything they can. They will raise up so many false prophets to try and keep you from organizing, right? Who tell you, oh, organizing is Trotskyism. Organizing is cringe. Well, if you protest, that's lame. Just listen to my podcast. Well, those people are liars and they're frauds. Because nothing short of organizing and building a serious mass movement is going to save us. Nothing short of organizing and building a mass movement is going to save us. And we have studied how they use Khrushchevism to destroy movements. And we have studied what they did to Jerry Healy. And we are studying the great African leader, Ibrahim Traore, and how he is organizing and building his people up with an anti-monopoly government on the continent of Africa, the Union of Sahel States, Burkina Faso. And we are organizing, and we will organize with whoever wants to organize with us, but we're not going to beg for a seat, a place in communism. Communism in America is a fringe, isolated movement, and we're not going to go and beg, please let us be part of communism. No, we're going to organize. We're going to organize, and we're going to do our own thing, and we're going to be out there in the name of anti-imperialism, and we have to build this movement. There is no alternative. We have got to build this movement. Long live innovationism. Long live the Center for Political Innovationism. Dare to struggle. Dare to win. We need a government of action that will fight for working families. That is the only way out of this crisis. We have got to build the movement. It is time to build the movement that this country needs. I am ready to organize. I am ready to fight. I am ready to build. I am ready to connect with people. I'm ready to agitate and organize and educate. I'm ready to do it, folks. I have never been more ready in my life. I have been shot at with all of their bullets, and I keep getting up again, and you should do the same thing. We are on a mission here, folks. We have our work cut out for us. I can see the new America that we are heading towards. I can see it with my own very eyes. We have got work to do. This country is going to be reborn in an explosion of popular struggle and popular power and hope and optimism. And we are going to get the ball rolling. We are going to get the ball rolling, and we are going to guide the coming explosion and point it towards where it needs to go. Dare to struggle, dare to win, dare to struggle, dare to win. It's time to get on this train because it's pulling out of the station, folks. It is pulling out of the station. It's time to get on the train and start speeding ahead. And that's what I've got to say to you. And maybe you like it and maybe you don't. I don't care. If you like it, get involved. And if you don't, move on. We've got a job to do. We have got a job to do, and we're doing it. So on that note, folks, we'll do the roll call, then I'll answer any questions you got. And then I'm headed out of the country for a little bit, and I'll be back in 10 days or so. So names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who is with us? Rice from Adelaide, Australia. Good to see you, Rice. Yusuf Durham in North Carolina. Bendigo, Australia. David Fox. Good to see you, David. Ryan in Kansas City. JT24 in Mississippi. Wait, you haven't put on a song. I missed it. Gabby in Chicago. Oslo. Dan in LA. Patch in Arizona. Scott in Pennsylvania. Raphael from Glasgow, Scotland. Hemp Car. Good to see you. Good to see you. Names and locations. Who's with us? Names and locations. Sarah, it's been a while. Good to see you, Sarah. Los Angeles, California. Bradley Briggs. Killian, good to see you as well. Good to see you. Alex in Brazil. Good to see you as well. Florida Panhandle. That is a neat part of the country up there by Georgia. Huey Long in the South. Names and locations. Anybody else? Names and locations. Anybody? Oslo. Tim, good to see you, Tim. Tim is here. This is like a reunion. There's so many great people here. That's why I do this channel, right? Is because I know we've got people everywhere. We've got people in every part of this country. And there's people that are what I call the lurkers, right? That watch but never comment in the chat. And I love you guys, right? And there's a lot of people who hear this. They just keep coming back to this channel because it gives them something. I'm near Syracuse, New York, says Randy. Oh, great. Yeah. I have a good friend from Syracuse. One of the guys who plays music at our events is a Syracuse guy. Yeah, it gives people something. Look, this is what keeps us attached to something real. And I'm really, really happy about what we do. And I'm really excited about our community. And, we do this, we do that, we organize, we change, we evolve, we adapt, and we're doing great stuff. So I'm looking for questions. I'm looking for something. Right? Has anyone sent any questions? I think Gabby sent a question. So Gabby sent a question. Okay. Gabby sent a question, which is good. And does anyone else have a question? Anybody else got a question? If you want to send in a question, the way to send in your question is to go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Moppet and send your question that way. Gabby sent a question. So we'll do Gabby's question first. And then we'll go from there. So Gabby's question that came in was, why is it that we are about to live in a world where AI data centers will soon take over and unemployment will happen? And apparently more community hospitals are closing, but we have money to build AI data centers, but not community hospitals. Not against AI, but shouldn't there be a solution for people who will lose their jobs to AI? Yeah, and you get it, Gabby. I mean, you listen to these streams, you get it. AI isn't the problem. The problem is we have a system where profits are in command. And the reason that they're building AI data centers is because AI data centers lead to making money. And the reason they're not building community hospitals is because those hospitals do not lead to them making money. Profits are in command. And AI isn't a problem. The problem is that in our system, the more efficient it becomes to do work, the less human beings are involved in production, the more irrational the economic system is, the more people lose their jobs, the easier it is to replace workers on the job. It's not a rational problem. AI should be a good thing, but in our highly irrational economic system, it's a bad thing. And it's funny. I have a little pamphlet, that I wrote. Right. I took one of my other pieces and I made like a little booklet called "AI is not the problem." The problem isn't AI itself, right? The problem is that in our highly irrational system, AI, leads to people being out of work and, less human labor power in production. And, there is kind of a critique of AI that is what you might call like Luddite, right? That was just bad. And that's not the point, right? That's not the point. The point, it should be easy to make graphics. It should be easy to proofread texts. It should be easy to, AI itself isn't the problem. The problem is our economic system. And that if we had a rational economic system, AI wouldn't be the issue. And that ultimately, this is what, again, if you read Marx, it's almost like he was two different people. He had two different messages, right? And this is the problem with Marx, and this is why we're innovationists. On the one hand, Karl Marx was a radical, a European intellectual, a radical of the 1800s. He was a left Hegelian. He believed in ruthless criticism of all things that exist. He said the ideal state of being was to fight. His hero was Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods, and he wanted to rebel and tear things down and create instability to fight. That was the spiritual, aesthetic side of Marx. The other side of Marx, though, the economic side of Marx, is striving for the exact opposite. He's looking at the world and he's saying the economy is becoming more and more unstable, and poverty is being created by abundance, and technology is leading to more instability, and that we need a rationally organized economy to centralize the instruments of production. So on the one hand, his soul is calling for more rebellion, more instability, more chaos. That's what he wants spiritually. On the other side, he wants more stability, more order, more tradition and culture and everything to be centralized. He wanted two different things. What he wanted with his economics and what he wanted with his spiritual and cultural side were two contradictory things. And, I wrote an introduction to our edition of Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific, where I talked about how really the fight, the disagreement between Engels, Marx and Engels, and Eugen Düring, the conservative German socialist, that Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific was originally a much longer book called Anti-Düring, written by Engels. That debate needs to be reopened, because at the end of the day, Düring was saying that socialism would come into existence on the basis of what he called a harmony of interests, and that you'd have a state that worked to balance a harmony of interests of all of society and got rid of the market and command, and you got a popular state that worked in the interests of society overall. And Marx was saying, no, socialism is going to come into existence on the basis of class struggle, of the employer fighting the employee battling for his rights against the employer, and it'll be this conflict that will create socialism. And if you look at China and you look at modern socialist countries, the way they espouse things and the message that they put out is much more in line with what Düring wanted than with what Marx wanted. Right? China is not urging people in China to engage in conflict with each other. They're saying we have a popular state that is working in the interests of all of society, and that conflict is part of reality, but oneness and the striving for oneness and unity and harmony of interest is another part of society. Right? And it's another part of reality. And that the Marx Düring debate kind of needs to be reopened in that context, and that that's something that we in CPI have been bold enough to say, that, that we want a government that invests in human beings. That's what we want. And there we go. So there we go. So someone's telling me that the YouTube chat is frozen. Is that the case? Right? It says that the stream is frozen on Rumble and that the chat is frozen. Is that actually true? Right here, the stream is frozen. On YouTube, it's frozen. I don't know. I don't know if that's the case. Okay, but another question did come in from Huey Kingfish. How do you convince peers on the left that there is an earnest working class populist movement on the big bad right? Left leaders like yourself, Jimmy Dore, Glenn Greenwald, George Galloway are paving the way for a left-right populist collaboration. I don't know if I'm on the left. That's my background. I spent my life on the left, but I have certain principles that I espouse. Anti-imperialism, pro-growth is a really big part of what I believe. And economic justice and, anti-imperialism and solidarity, and I mean, those things used to be identified with the left, but now the left has gone its own way. But I'm not on the right either, right? Because the right believes in free markets, and the right tends to, be, very, very, I don't know. We just got to forget about left and right. We're doing something completely new and completely different. And, I hear what Ro Khanna says about new economic patriotism. I like it. I hear what Marjorie Taylor Greene says about, wanting not to have an economy based on dead bodies in foreign countries, but an economy that serves the American people and puts American people's needs first. I hear what George Galloway says. I hear what Jimmy Dore says. And I mean, I like it. I like what I'm hearing. And even Tucker Carlson has had, he's much more free market than I would be. And he seems to be anti-China in a lot of ways, which I don't agree with. I'm very sympathetic to China. I think China's moving in a good direction. But at the end of the day, we just got to forget left. We got to forget right, because it all just becomes team sports and it all just becomes a battle of personalities. And we really got to forget influencers. I just got to tell you, I don't want to be an influencer. I might kind of be an influencer here, but I'm done being an influencer. I really am. I'm tired of, that's why I don't say, about 2 years ago, I stopped saying, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I don't say that anymore because I feel like that's a trap, and if you start thinking about that, I have a job that I can do, and I have people who want to do the job with me, people who appreciate what I do and what I have to offer, and people that appreciate the understanding that we're pioneering here and want to carry out anti-imperialist operations with me. And that's what I focus on. And I'm not focused on winning the internet, because the internet is rigged and the internet is fake. And I'm not, we just got to build our community and we got to organize. Right. And so I don't want to be an influencer. And influencers, it gradually becomes less and less about politics and becomes more and more about the influencer. And influencers fight with other influencers for no reason, because they're just competing. They want the attention, not the other person. And influencer culture is very, very toxic, and it plays into the political team sports. I would vote for a Democrat if I thought it would advance the struggle of working families against globalism, imperialism. I would vote for a Republican if I thought it would advance the struggle against imperialism. I would vote for a third party, and I most likely will vote for a third party. I can't think of a single presidential well, never mind. But I don't want to reveal who I voted for, but generally in my life, I have voted third party because I don't have faith in either of the big parties. But I would vote for a Democrat and I would vote for a Republican if it would advance it. But I'm not interested in the team sports. I really am not. I am really, really not, interested in the team sports. I'm interested in organizing a movement, and I'm interested in espousing and teaching the economic conceptions that I laid out on here, the anti-Malthusian perspective, the idea that, the understanding of the tendency of the falling rate of profit, the understanding of man's creative power. I'm interested in organizing the kind of movement that I'm on here talking about every night. That's what I want to do, and that's what I'm interested in. And, whether that's left, whether that's right, backwards, forwards, I don't know what it is, but I will say that there is a toxic culture, that has developed, and this influencer culture is very, very toxic, and we have to transcend that toxic culture by just building our own community. And that's why things like the 7-day program are so important, because you're not just there for a day and, you hear some speeches and you go home. It's about bonding with other people. It's about connecting with our community, getting to know members of our community. That's, being part of something. And that's what we need to give to people. We need people to be connected and learn to carry out operations together. And, like what we did in New York with the No Kings intervention, where we blocked the parade. What we've done, with the Ibrahim Traore rallies that we've had, what we've done with the Kamala Harris book, with our Peace MAGA operation. We continue to do stuff where we intervene very effectively. We have learned the art of seeing what the circumstances are and intervening, and we're getting better at it. And we're perfecting our ability to intervene in society, to take what we have around us and do something that advances anti-imperialism and advances our message. And that's what we're going to continue to do. So we need people to do it with us. We have a method that we have developed, and we have an understanding. I have a slideshow. I do a lot of slideshows on this channel. I have a slideshow called the Innovationist Method. If you watch it, I talk about how it's not simply a matter of doing stuff. It's a matter of learning, developing a method. How is it that we think of what we do, and how do we measure success, and how do we intervene effectively? And we're getting better and better and better at it every day. And there's a method, the innovationist method for intervening. And we become better and better and better at that method every day. We're really figuring things out. It's really great what we're able to do. Yeah, I hope to teach more people to do it. And we need people to play leadership roles, right? We need, I really appreciate Gabby and Noah and Dan and Penny. They have taken on leadership roles in the organization, and I can see all of them. Dan leads operations every weekend. They go out and do outreach, and Gabby, leads operations, and Noah leads operations. Penny's always leading operations out in Minneapolis, and that we need more people to play leadership roles, and that's one of the things about CPI is that, we don't simply want to recruit you to be an audience member. We don't simply want to recruit you to hand out flyers. We want to recruit people to take on leadership roles and lead classes and give presentations and teach concepts and write pamphlets, right? Penny just wrote this beautiful booklet about the great African leader Ibrahim Traore. She's working on a second pamphlet about the achievements of the Union of Sahel States. That's great. We want that. We want her to write a pamphlet, right? We want to find people and figure out what their skills are and enable them to use their skills to advance anti-imperialism. And we want to build a network of people who can rely on each other to carry out successful anti-imperialist operations. It's not an easy thing to do. Part of it is that our education system is a disaster. It used to be that, if you went to public school in America, you would have a decent skill at public speaking. You would have had to have gotten up in front of the class enough times and given a report that you could give a decent speech. Not anymore. Kids don't know how to speak very well. Used to be that, that working with other people to do stuff was stuff people knew how to do. It's a lot harder. People don't have the basic organizing skills they used to get, and that's okay. We just have to teach it to them, and we got to be patient, right? We got to be patient. And, I talk about living biologically, which is what our enemies want us to do. They want to reduce us to a mere biological existence. They view human beings as just another animal. And, they want us to not exercise any agency, to not ask any big questions, to not force the environment to serve us and interact with the environment to make things better. They want us to just exist in the same way a weed in your garden exists, or livestock exists. They view us as human livestock, and they want us to maintain a mere biological existence, to live only in the biological sense, to live biologically. What we are striving to do as an organization is to awaken people to take on a truly human existence and wrangle with big questions and organize and agitate and awaken and carry out strategic operations and look at the world around them and intervene to make it better, right? And that's what we're educating people about to do. We're really helping people to find their humanity, to reclaim their humanity from a society that is largely every day stripping it away from them. And so we're really helping people discover their humanity. And it is a process of transformation. People change as a result of this, as a result of being involved in the movement. I certainly have changed as a result of my activism. Activism very much saved my life. learning to go out on the street and engage people and sell newspapers. And, I've very much been a transformed person as a result of my my activist, life. And I know it is capable of making you a stronger and better person. I mean, I hope Gabby doesn't mind me sharing this, but I remember when, the first couple times we had a rally and Gabby was there, I said, "Hey, Gabby, you want to get on the microphone?" And she said, "Oh no, she was too nervous." Now, whenever we have a rally, Gabby's the first one on the microphone. You hand Gabby the bullhorn and she's like, "All right." And she gets on there and she agitates like you would never believe. Right. Well, that's because the movement changed her. Right. She was at first quite shy to get on the microphone. Now Gabby's one of our best agitators. She's always out in Chicago, and you should see what she was doing at our Iran rally. You should see what she was doing, at the rally, in New York. I mean, Gabby has become an agitator and has become an outspoken vocal agitator because the movement has given her that ability. It's not easy to get on a bullhorn. It's not easy to speak in front of a crowd of people, but now Gabby can do it like nothing else, right? It's just like tying your shoe. It's just like riding a bike, you just learn by doing, but it's a skill you have to learn, right? And other members of our organization have really grown, as a result of being involved in the movement, right? It is a great way to grow. Noah has a great video on his YouTube channel about using Malcolm X as an example of how a social movement, joining a social movement, is a path of personal transformation. And that really, that is what all these self-help and YouTube channels and, looks maxing and all that, they don't understand, is that ultimately the best way to become a better person is to get involved in the struggle, is to become part of an effort to improve the world, to become an activist and work with other people to make the world a better place. That is the way you become a better person. You improve your people skills, you improve your communication skills, you learn, and you interact with people you wouldn't normally interact with, and your knowledge and your scope and your horizon it's just an amazing way to be. It's the only way to be, right? It's really the only way to be. And I want to enable people to do it. And it's not for everybody. And some people can't do it, but at the end of the day, it's a great way to be. And John McCarthy has been an activist his whole life, right? I mean, in different organizations and stuff, but he's been a CPI member for years now, and he's been a lifelong activist. And Gabby is involved in CPI, and she's younger than I am, and John is significantly older than I am, but the two of them have worked together and they have learned to organize. Organizing, it's a lot of different skills, right? On the one hand, it's people skills, it's writing skills, it's speaking skills, it's team collaboration skills, management skills. I mean, it's a lot of different skills you can learn from being an organizer. It requires it tests your ability to do all kinds of different things, and it's a really rewarding way to be. I mean, that's what I would like you to be. And I'm trying to build a movement here. I'm trying to organize and build a movement. And that's what I'm on here to do. And that's what purpose this channel, this YouTube channel, this podcast, this Rumble, whatever you want to call it, that's the purpose it serves. We are organizing a movement. So yeah, that's what we're doing. So if anyone else has any more questions, please feel free to send them in. If not, you guys aren't going to get to see me for, like 10 days. I'm going to be gone. So you better get your questions in now, guys. You better get your questions in now if you want me to answer them. The clock is ticking, right? The clock is ticking. It's 10:39 Eastern Standard Time here in New York. So if you got something, you got me, any questions, now is the time to send the questions. I see Hemp Car put a couple Rumble rants in the chat, so I'll answer those too. But yeah, the clock is ticking, so please send in your questions, and then I'll be gone for a bit. But please put a song. Okay, I'll put a song on. But please, watch this channel while I'm gone. I have a whole bunch of videos that you can watch while I'm gone. So, but yeah, Gabby said I should put a song, so I'm going to follow Gabby's instructions. I'm going to put on a song. All right. Socialism is good. There you go. That was North Korea performing a traditional Chinese communist song called Socialism is Good. But we've got other songs we can put on, right? We don't have to stop at Socialism is Good. There are other songs out there. You know, I have increasingly liked this song, King Harvest, which is about it's about the Communist Party's sharecroppers unions. It's, you know, from the band, but this is someone playing, you know, King Harvest. So here we go.
Corn in the fields, I listen to the rats when the wind blows across the water. King Harvest is surely come. I work for the union, 'cause she's so good to me, and I'm bound to come out on top. That's when she said I should be. I will hear every word the boss may say, for he's the one who hands me down my pay. Looks like this time I'm gonna get to stay. I'm a union man now all the way. Smell of the leaves from the magnolia trees in the meadow. King Harvest is surely come. A dry summer and then come fall, which I depend on most of all. Hey Rainmaker, can you hear the call? Please let these crops grow tall. Long enough I've been up on Skid Row, and it's plain to see I'm nothing to show. I'm glad to pay those union dues. Just don't judge me by my shoes. Scarecrow in a yellow moon, and pretty soon a carnival on the edge of town. King Harvest is surely come. Last year this time it wasn't no joke. My whole barn went up in smoke, and our horse Jethro, well, he went mad, and I can't ever remember things being that bad. And then here come a man with a paper and pen, telling us our hard times are about to end. And then if they don't give us what we like, he said, man, that's when you gotta go on strike. Corn in the fields, I listen to the rats
All right, folks. Well, I just got to tell you. So, on April 7th, there was a bridge that was blown up by the United States and Iran, and this bridge is now fully reconstructed today. And this is actually video. The train in Iran is already going over it. Can you believe it? Just 3 days ago, this bridge was destroyed by a U.S. bomb, and now it is rebuilt and secure. And this is from Press TV, and a train is driving right over it. That is resilience, right? I could start reciting the builder's poem that I do for you all, right? In a busy street, in a busy town, I saw them tearing a building down. With a ho heave ho and a lusty yell, the men swung a beam and a side wall fell. So I said to the foreman, "Are these men skilled, like those you would hire if you wanted to build?" And the foreman just smiled and said, "No, indeed. Common labor is all that I need, for I can easily wreck in a week or two that which took builders years to do." So I thought to myself as I walked away, which of these roles have I tried to play? Am I a builder who builds with care, measuring life with a compass and square? Am I living my life by a well-made plan and striving to do the best that I can? Or am I the type that scours the town, content with the labor of tearing things down? And I very much have tried to live by that, be a builder, not a wrecker, and bring out the best in people, expect the best from people, and help people keep going. We did get another question. This is an interesting one. Why is it that Bukele, it's anonymous, why is it Bukele and Elon Musk are waging this weird war on American liberal justices? Bukele and Petro had a huge Twitter debate about the value of mass incarceration. Bukele called for American judges to be impeached. I'm sorry, it's not a weird thing that a foreign leader calls on American judges to be impeached. Look, Bukele had potential to be good. He did. And fuck Bukele. I mean, Zionist, set up prison camps in cooperation with Trump where they were deporting people. And Bukele he's ruined. I don't think, a lot of working class people are very, very terrorized by gangs. And if you go to Jamaica, you go to Honduras, you go to El Salvador, where Bukele is in power, a lot of these gangs, working class people really suffer because of them. And so there's a populist support for the police in these countries. That's one thing that people have talked about. In the Dominican Republic, they had a dictator, a US-backed dictator named Trujillo. And there's a lot of people in the Dominican Republic now who say, "Oh, we need Trujillo back because he would just kill all these gangsters," And so there's an element of this kind of like, working class people wanting a strong state to protect them from gangs, from the criminal activities of narco gangs and stuff. So there's a populism to that. But I think Bukele is completely discredited. I think I don't see him as doing anything good. He discredited himself, and mass incarceration, it doesn't work. If you just throw people in jail, it doesn't solve problems. If you just, the prison system in America is one of our greatest national embarrassments. But if you just, if you still have the problem and you're just not putting people in jail and they're just out there, right? And the problems, you obviously have to fix the problems. At the end of the day, you just have to fix the problem. And you're not going to solve it by throwing people in jail. And, if the problem doesn't then get solved by not throwing the people in jail, well, you still got to fix the problem. And unfortunately, that's part of the way that American discourse is. Well, it's like, liberals say, well, the problem is we're throwing people in jail. And I agree, we're throwing people in jail way too much. And in the last few years, there's been kind of a reverse of that. Okay. And then conservatives say, "Oh, look, but there's still problems. We still have drugs. We still have crime." Okay. Well, we obviously need to do something about that, about the fact that there's mass unemployment, about, our culture. There's a lot of things that need to change. And, it's like if throwing people in jail was not the answer and not throwing people in jail didn't to solve it, the answer is not to then go back to throwing people in jail. It's like there are other options than just throw people in jail or don't throw them in jail. There are obviously things that could change in our culture and in our, economic system that could lead to a better situation. So there you go. I mean, I don't know what more to say. But it's yeah. I mean, it's like, again, if you just frame everything as, well, there is two options: throw people in jail or don't. Well, okay. I mean, you're still going to have a lot of problems, and crime isn't just going to magically go away by not throwing people in jail, and it didn't go away by throwing people in jail. So I think that's the problem. So I don't know. And they talk about the Soros prosecutors, and I didn't pay attention. I didn't notice that particular debate between Elon Musk and Bukele. And yeah, right. It is amusing, right? You said about foreign judges, right? That whole thing about foreign meddling. The USA is constantly meddling. Obama went to the UK to tell Scotland not to vote for independence. No one objected America meddling in Britain's politics, right? I mean, Obama also told them not to vote for Brexit, and no one objected. Countries comment on other countries' political stuff all the time. But they created this silly hysteria around Russia, about Russian meddling. And it's like, they created this whole silly hysteria. So now it's this whole thing. It's like, it's not uncommon for, I mean, Bukele or any other leader to not like a policy or not like a president in a country, right? And it wouldn't be diplomatic, and you can understand they might take offense. But it's just, countries are intertwined with each other. And it's, this hysteria they've made about this kind of thing is selective. It's selective. Israel meddles in American politics like you wouldn't believe, but it's not just them. So does Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has lobbyists, right? Pam Bondi, the former U.S. Attorney General, used to be a Qatari lobbyist. Did you know that? She used to work for Qatar. There's all kinds of things. Now, Sarah says the punitive system works if it is applied justly across all classes, but that it isn't. The rules don't apply to the wealthy. Yeah. Our legal system is very much a pay-to-play system, right? Where, I mean, and it gets really blatant, for prisoners. The amount of money that prisoners' families have to pay to call them on the phone and things like that. I mean, it's, if you have money, you can get a better lawyer. You can get a better defense. You'll get a lesser sentence. The judge will look at you as a less dangerous person. But if you're poor, you'll get a bigger sentence. You won't have a very good lawyer. And even the incarceration that you get, you're going to get less phone calls. You're going to get worse food. I mean, it's, our legal system is very much pay for play. It's not about the crime you commit. Right. The punishment you get is not about the crime you commit. It's largely based on how many resources you can muster to protect yourself. And that's unfortunate, and I mean, I don't know what more to say about it. Yeah, I mean, our prison system is very much an embarrassment. So, all right. Well, listen, folks, I'm going to be gone. But this channel is going to have all kinds of stuff on it, right? So keep an eye out for all the videos I've got back. Use the mega premiere, like the 8-hour videos. You can just put that on while you're cleaning your apartment. It can be kind of background, or whatever. I do have some other videos premiering of different things. So I'm going to try to keep this channel as active, before I head out of town. I've got a lot of videos set up to premiere. So keep coming back. I'll be back in 10 days. Rumble Rants. Thank you for reminding me, Penny. Rumble Rants. Yes, Rumble Rants, right? Okay, Rumble Rants. All right, Hempcar says, have you heard of the book Fire in the Minds of Men by the chief LOC libertarian? I heard it claims Russia and Hitler were both funded by the same banksters. Well, whoever that guy is, I've not heard of that particular book. But that is a common belief among conservatives, and that the British Empire funded all of them. And that the USA did business with both Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. That doesn't mean they were agents of them. And the Wall Street funded the Bolshevik Revolution thing. I've debunked that many times. But were there intelligence agencies that were involved in various political movements to advance their own agenda? Absolutely. The Germans gave Lenin lots of support because they wanted Russia to, be weakened in the fight during World War I. And, there's a whole history there. And, the British funded the Polish national movement against Russia. And that's why Rosa Luxemburg, was not interested in the Polish national thing. And there's a whole lot, on that. Right. But, just because someone gets covert support or something doesn't make them an agent. And that that's a lot of the kind of conspiracy stuff. It's like anyone who ever got a support or a boost from somebody, therefore, is their puppet, and therefore works part of them is all the grand plan. And they assign a lot of grand plans, and whereas that there aren't any. Excellent expose of USA exploiting Russia. He posted a link if anyone wants to take a look at it. More glut. Amazon faces scrutiny after destroying laptops and tablets. Yeah, well, they didn't make those laptops and tablets so people could have something to use. They made those laptops and tablets so they could make money. How was the USSR so successful in increasing living standards of their citizens without inviting capital markets to balance their economy and build up productive forces like China had to? Well, they did invite, American companies to help them build, right? The companies that they built were state run, but like, for example, they invited Henry Ford, the Soviet car plants. They invited Ford Motor Company, and they paid Ford Motor Company a lot of money to help them set up the power plants, or the car industry. They paid General Electric a lot of money to help them set up their power plants and give them the designs and plans. They paid a lot of money to different companies to help them build. And I always talk about the Koch brothers. Their father, Fred Koch, was hired to help set up the Soviet oil industry. And that, they did hire foreign experts to help them build things up. They absolutely did. And they mobilized the population largely to go out and build and to rapidly do so. And that's the 5-year economic plans that Stalin did. They were very, very miraculous. I mean, it was like amazing what they did, the 5-year economic plans. And you read what everyone was saying. Everyone was marveling about how the Soviet Union was so rapidly moving ahead, that they were mobilizing the population, a spirit of kind of selflessness and Stakhanovism and hard work. And they built up major industries. They built heavy industries. And the thing is, you don't need the market for heavy industries. And please, that's a point of confusion, right? You really don't need the market to build heavy industries. You don't need the market to build power plants. You might need to get the plans, the designs, you might need to hire technicians to design it or something, but you don't need the market to build a power plant. You don't need the market to build a steel mill. You don't need the market to build a meat packing facility. You don't, right? When it comes to like major commanding heights of the economy, you don't need the market for that. You do, I would maintain, need the market for consumer goods, things that make life fun, restaurants, hotels, children's toys, clothing, things like that. Yeah, in order for it to be enjoyable for people need to be able to vote with their dollars. The market needs to be able to kind of give the feedback about what people want, etc. So that's a little bit different. And that when it came to consumer goods, yeah, the USSR was weak, but they weren't weak in, and when it came to computers, they built their own home computer system all by themselves without any foreign technology. Read about it. When it came to computers, even though they didn't have anywhere near the resources, they still made great breakthroughs. They invented space travel. My argument has never been that the market is necessary for heavy industry or the market is necessary for basic industrialization. And I've never maintained that. The market is not necessary for that. The market is necessary for other things. Yeah. So that let's just be clear on that. And please play the banger Coloma on the Wing. Okay. I mean, it's a North Korean song. People seem to like it. I don't quite understand why it's so popular with our audience, but if that's Kalima on the Wing. All right. We'll put it on, the North Korean song. I guess people like it. I don't object to it. I generally, it's a great song, but it's not, I don't know. I mean, it's not particularly, I know a lot of people really like it. So, all right, we'll put it on. Here we go. Oh, it looks like my downloader link is back. So there we go. That'll make it easier. All right, here we go. Verify that I'm a human. All right. Oh, here it comes. All right, cool. And Kalima on the Wing. All right. All right. Kalima on the Wing. Here we go. I feel like this is a radio show. We got any requests? A request? Kalima on the Wing, requested by... Anyway, here we go. There you go. There you go. And Penny sent a video last night about the KMT, the leader of the Kuomintang Nationalist Party in Taiwan, on the government on the island of Taiwan, visiting the Chinese mainland. So here we go.
昨天，我看到勇敢的台湾年轻人只身来到上海闯天下。昨天，我们在美团也看到了最新的互联网经济，还有低空经济。昨天事实上给了立文很大的启示，包括上海的陈书记跟他一番话。 也给我非常多的启示，台商的未来发展，还有新的经济的升级转型，如何跟科技的结合。站在这辽阔的大海，我们的心胸都开阔了起来。在这边，世界的货物进出吞吐。 我们也抱着面向国际社会的胸怀，在这里，我也希望能够更自信，向国际社会宣示，两岸一定会担负起在整个区域创造和平、维持稳定，来让所有的人们都可以来这里追寻、实现你的梦想的美好地方。
去深成，越想到了上海， 然后到了台湾吗？台办就是做了一个两岸的创业视讯交流，然后就过来体验。体验完之后发现，这里的创业环境还有周边的伙伴，其实都跟就是我们相处起来非常的融洽。
我是因为24年的时候入学复旦念研究生，所以才来到上海。虽然才不到2年，但是我觉得我已经有一个很深的印象。然后我觉得不管是各省份可以拥有的交流的机会，还是面向国际的机会，都增加了非常多。
All right, there you go. The big deal that a leader of the government on Taiwan came to the mainland, and we hope that the U.S. plan to incite confrontation between the government on Taiwan and the Chinese mainland doesn't go through, and that they can eventually unify into one country. I mean, they are one country, unify into one government. That would be ultimately in the interest of humanity if they could do so gradually without any kind of military confrontation in their own basic economic interest. I think that would be great. One China, one China, one China. So Gabby sent another question. And the question is, why is it that other countries are discovering cures for diseases? Meanwhile, in the USA, medical care is more expensive. Well, it's because generally it tends to be government-funded research that discovers new medicines, right? And this is the people who believe in the free market. They think the free market solves all problems. It doesn't. And in fact, a lot of the great tech innovations that come through the government. They're eventually privatized and corporations make profit from them. But, research, tech, development, that is how new discoveries come. And we don't fund that anymore. And other countries do. They do have government funded research on these kind of things. We don't, right? Big pharma does all kinds of, studies and stuff, but at the end of the day, they're not going to take the risks unless they can see that they need a profit. It's kind of like, why does Hollywood make the same movie over and over and over again? Why? Well, Hollywood makes the same movie over and over and over again because they don't want to risk. They don't want to do the risk of, of making a movie that might not sell. Well, the government can risk, right? And that, that the state can just kind of, let artists do their thing. George Lucas, the filmmaker, pointed out that, it's true in the Soviet Union, there were political limits on what you could make. You couldn't make films that were against the Communist Party. However, in America, Hollywood filmmakers were much more restricted because the corporation that was paying for the film wanted to make sure they could make a profit and would sit there and just go over every aspect of the film to make sure that they could make a profit on it. And so while the Soviet Union said, okay, you can't do films against communism, if you make a film in Hollywood, all the funders and all the investors and the marketing companies and all of them are going to be all over you and tell you exactly how to do it so you can make money. And that's an aspect of things that that people don't always acknowledge. It's very exciting. And the fusion energy research, finding a cure for cancer and all of that. Yeah, that you need a state, right, to have all these kinds of breakthroughs in the arts, in the sciences, in technology. Ultimately, it is a strong state that leads to all these things. There's this mythology that only the market does this stuff, and that's just not the truth. It's just not the truth. And I appreciate that a lot of libertarians are very, very good when it comes to opposing the wars, opposing the lockdowns, being pro-growth, but they just believe that only the market does stuff. And if that was the case, America would be surging ahead. We're the most free market Western country that there is, and we're falling apart. Most of the Western world is following our example and looting their public sector and, engaging in austerity. So we're not the only ones, so please don't get me wrong. But at the same time, please don't get me wrong. It's not like it's a uniquely American problem, but yeah, our belief in free markets has not been largely beneficial. That I'll say. So yeah, glad you sent that. I did want to show, since we showed like 2 North Korean things. I did want to show the video of, Gabby and Noah they kicked off the distribution of our pamphlet. This is the pamphlet we have about Kim Il-sungya, the flower that Kim Il-sung, named after Kim Il-sung from Indonesia. This is the video of them kicking off the outreach campaign around this flower. And today I went to the post office. I lugged a big box to the post office, and I sent a bunch of these to Los Angeles, and I sent a bunch of these to Minneapolis, and I've got a whole bunch of them left here in my apartment, which my wife is not thrilled about. So we are getting these out, right? This is our new CPI outreach campaign about Kim Il-sungya. Someday this flower will grow in the White House rose garden and the halls of Congress, educating people about Kim Il-sungya.
We're here outside of the historic Riverside Church in Harlem, New York City. Historic church involved with the civil rights movement and many other struggles. Big center for ban the bomb protests. It's where Martin Luther King famously gave his speech condemning the Vietnam War and talking about how we needed some sort of democratic socialism.
Went on a Sunday to pass out these, and the people were friendly. This last part, hope that one day we could all merge together.
Talks about the Kim Il-sungya. It was a symbol of friendship between Indonesia and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea at the time when Sukarno, who was part of the non-aligned movement. When people think about North Korea, they think about military parades. They think of people starving in the streets. They think of very dire looking cities. This is something that's full of life and hope and optimism. It's a flower that only grows in a socialist country, and it's hard to get because of the sanctions that have been imposed on North Korea and that are very harsh and unfair.
They were like saying, is there a garden or is there a flower shop that they sell this? And I'm like, well, you have to find out. And I told them about that Kim Il-sungya flower, and the back part I kept reading.
So there you go. Good stuff. Good stuff. We're going to have more videos about the Kim Il-sungya campaign. I'm hoping that LA will find some, historic building, or neat place they can go to, kind of like Riverside Church or something, and do this distribution campaign, and we can do another kind of video with similar background music and, just show the LA people doing this kind of outreach and, giving comments about it and all of that. And that we can just make this a thing that all over the country, people are getting copies of our Kim Il-sungya pamphlet, and we have that music. We Sing for the Future by Cornelius Cardew, which is a great piece of piano music, and, the Kim Il-sungya, and we could just make that like a series of videos. And, we go to, this summer, we go to important sites and places, and we just give them out and talk to people about Kim Il-sung and North Korea and the new economy and the Center for Political Innovation, because it's a very, it's got pictures of us outside of the Maduro jail, and it's got everything in there. It uses Kim Il-sungya as the hook, right? But it's about everything. I mean, there's CPI at the Teruri rally, and it's got everything in here. The Peace Bridge, the Bering Sea Tunnel, and it's loads of pictures of all kinds of great different stuff. So, and Malthusianism, and it's got, high-speed railway and the Crimea Bridge that Russia built, and it's got everything in it. So, so, all right, folks. All right. Well, listen, I don't think folks have any more questions, so I think I am going to say goodnight because tomorrow I got our CPI meeting, and then I'm headed to the airport. But I'll be back. It's going to be a pretty quick trip, just a quick trip, and then I'm in Missouri, and then I'm back. So there we go. First I'm headed out of the country, and then once I'm back in the country, then I'm headed to the Uhuru convention, and then I am back, and we'll be streaming some more, and hopefully we get full winter, we're full summer weather by then, because yeah, it's still cold in New York. Today it was freezing. So anyway, I'm going to put on the closing music. Thanks everybody. We're a great community. Yeah, it's time to just join CPI. If you're one of the people that watches this channel and loves what we do, you got to join. I mean, it's just time to get involved. It's time to become a member. We need you to just become a member so you can join the Zoom calls. You can make friends with other CPI members. Now is the time. It's time to just become a member. So just throwing that out there. I would like you to join CPI. Now is the time to get involved. All right, here we go. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.